청소년의 전인적인 성장을 지원하는 대한민국 대표 NGO로 성장했습니다. 눈물에서 시작한 푸른나무 재단은 희망의 싹을 틔웁니다. 새싹에서 나무까지 한 아이의 성장을 온전히 함께합니다. 아이가 만나는 첫 번째 공동체, 가족 안에서 행복하도록 가족과 함께하는 인성교육을 실시하고, 아이가 친구들과 어울리기 시작하면 사이좋게 지내는 방법을 눈높이에 맞춰 배웁니다. 자아가 발달하고 생각이 깊어지는 나이에는 나의 마음과 상대방의 마음이 더 잘 이어지도록 공감하는 법을 배웁니다. 청소년의 마음을 이해하고 내면에서부터 변화를 일으키는 푸른나무 재단의 생애주기 프로그램은 한 그루의 나무가 숲을 이루듯 한 명의 행복한 청소년이 모여 세상을 변화시킨다는 믿음에서 시작합니다. 그렇다면 청소년이 행복하게 자라기 위해서는 무엇이 필요할까요? 상담 치유, 교육 미래, 장학 나눔, 연구 정책 제안, 비폭력 문화운동 국제. 푸른나무 재단은 5가지 핵심 활동을 통해 청소년이 행복한 세상을 만들어갑니다.
제 마음을 알아줬으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 전국 학교폭력 상담 전화 1588-9128을 시작으로 학교폭력에 대한 상담이 전무했던 시절부터 지금까지 아이들의 마음을 보듬는 상담 사업을 진행하고 있습니다. 마음속 상처를 치유하는 상담 활동은 아이들이 시련을 극복하고 다시 희망을 꿈꿀 수 있도록 지원합니다.
함께 행복하게 자라는 법을 배웠으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 교실의 아이들을 학교폭력 방관자가 아닌 적극적인 예방자로 기르는 학교폭력 예방교육에서 시작해 아이들이 행복하게 성장하는 데 꼭 필요한 소통과 진로 프로그램을 지원합니다.
제 꿈을 응원해줬으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 모든 청소년이 환경과 관계없이 자유롭게 꿈꾸고 배우도록 후원자들과의 다양한 나눔 행사를 통해 청소년이 경제적 걱정 없이 자신의 미래를 설계하도록 돕는 장학재단을 운영하고 있습니다.
우리 문제를 같이 고민해줬으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 학교폭력에 대한 인식이 부족했던 시절부터 꾸준한 연구를 진행하여 청소년에게 꼭 필요한 정책과 제도에 대해 발언해 왔습니다. 한국 최초로 청소년 대상 학교폭력 실태조사를 실시하고 47만 명 시민의 서명을 모아 학교폭력 예방과 대책에 관한 법률이 제정되도록 제안했습니다.
싸우지 않는 세상이 되었으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 학교폭력의 근본적인 해결을 위해서는 사회 문화가 바뀌어야 한다고 믿습니다. 우리 사회 전체가 비폭력 문화를 지향하도록 꾸준히 캠페인 활동을 진행하며 UN 글로벌 컴팩트 회원으로서 세계와 함께 청소년이 더 행복한 세상을 만들기 위해 고민하고 있습니다. 푸른나무 재단의 모든 활동은 청소년의 아픔을 외면하지 않은 후원자 여러분 덕분에 가능했습니다. 후원자의 따뜻한 마음은 푸른나무 재단의 활동을 가능하게 하고 청소년의 상처를 치유하고 희망을 열어주는 빛이 됩니다. 아무도 돌아보지 않았던 청소년의 아픔, 푸른나무 재단의 꾸준한 활동으로 학교 폭력은 서서히 줄어들었고 아이들이 좀 더 안전한 환경에서 성장할 수 있게 됐습니다. 그러나 최근 학교 폭력의 저연령화, 사이버 폭력과 성폭력의 증가로 우리 아이들은 다시 위협받고 있습니다. 아직도 많은 청소년이 도움을 필요로 하고 있습니다. 어려움에 처한 아이들에게 희망을 주는 푸른 별이 되어 주십시오.
학교 폭력 더 이상 방관해서는 안 됩니다. 지금 여러분도 함께 하실 수 있습니다.
청소년이 희망을 꿈꾸는 폭력 없는 세상을 만듭니다. 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
아이들이 보내는 도움의 신호들 외면하지 말고 손 내밀어 주세요.
청소년 여러분들 화이팅입니다.
청소년 여러분 화이팅!
화이팅!
외면하지 말고 지켜주세요. 모두 행복한 세상을 위해
우리의 푸른 나무가 되어주세요. 청소년을 지키는 푸른 나무가 되어주세요.
지금 청소년의 푸른 나무가 되어 주세요.
개성을 존중해
예방자로 기른
So I need your attention here, okay? We're going to talk about sustainable development.
I would say the vision of the World Youth Alliance is of personal excellence. You see all of these young people from all around the world. They care about others, they care about the world.
We all have the same mission because we all want to change the world. We all want to change our societies.
Everyone's talking about human rights, but no one knows why they're protecting them.
They're looking for answers. Who am I? Do I actually matter?
How can I really implement human dignity in my day-to-day life?
Just that idea that if you believe in something enough and you work hard enough, you can really change the world with something as simple as the idea of the dignity of the human person.
If you can teach people lessons of human dignity, there will be a lot less massacres or genocide. Which is why principles that YA stands for, which is equality and dignity for every human being, is very important. Because unless you know why you're fighting for something, I don't think that goal can be achieved in the short term or even in the long term.
YA is really making me see the beauty in a person despite everything else and making it something more than just ideology or a theory, putting it into practice and really kind of starting a revolution.
I think there is an urgency in terms of artwork. I don't see anyone else doing the work the World Youth Alliance is doing. Freedom is this huge burden of responsibility, but also power in that sense that through ideas you're shaping your surroundings and trying to sculpt them towards something better.
Human dignity is how he is to improve himself for what is true and what is beautiful.
Definitely an urgent time to point out those inconsistencies in our different ideologies and show that we need to be consistently affirming the value of human life at all levels, otherwise we all become vulnerable.
Organizations like World Youth Alliance have to exist because there's a constant need for someone to stand up for the little guy, the person that has no voice, and that's what World Youth Alliance does.
청소년이 행복한 세상은 어떤 세상일까요?
아이들이 건강하게 쑥쑥 자랄 수 있는 세상.
개성을 존중해주는 세상.
차별 없이 마음껏 뛰어놀 수 있는 세상.
아이들이 드넓은 세상을 다 둘러볼 수 있으면 좋겠어요.
무사히 어른이 될 수 있는 세상.
푸른나무 재단은 한 아이의 희생에서 시작됐습니다. 가족과 친구들의 아낌없는 사랑을 받던 꿈 많은 소년 대현이. 대현이는 16살이 되던 1995년 6월 학교 폭력을 견디지 못하고 스스로 목숨을 끊었습니다. 학교 폭력으로 인한 죽음. 하지만 모두 학교 안에 폭력은 없다고 말하며 부정했습니다. 아들을 가슴에 묻은 아버지는 학교 폭력과의 긴 싸움을 시작했습니다. 김대영 군이 세상을 떠나고 아버지 김종기 씨는 청소년 폭력 예방재단을 설립해 학교 폭력이라는 단어조차 부정했던 시절 학교 폭력의 위험성을 사회에 알리기 시작했습니다. 푸른나무 재단은 청소년 보호 이슈를 우리나라 최초로 공론화시키며 학교 폭력을 예방하고 치유하기 위해 사회적, 제도적 기반을 마련했습니다. 비영리단체로 꾸준한 활동과 투명성을 인정받아 아산상, 인촌상, 막사이사이상 등 여러 상을 수상했으며 UN 특별협의 지위까지 획득했습니다. 푸른나무 재단은 이제 아이들이 상처를 이겨내고 자신의 꿈을 펼치도록 청소년의 전인적인 성장을 지원하는 대한민국 대표 NGO로 성장했습니다. 눈물에서 시작한 푸른나무 재단은 희망의 싹을 틔웁니다. 새싹에서 나무까지 한 아이의 성장을 온전히 함께합니다. 아이가 만나는 첫 번째 공동체, 가족 안에서 행복하도록 가족과 함께하는 인성교육을 실시하고, 아이가 친구들과 어울리기 시작하면 사이좋게 지내는 방법을 눈높이에 맞춰 배웁니다. 자아가 발달하고 생각이 깊어지는 나이에는 나의 마음과 상대방의 마음이 더 잘 이어지도록 공감하는 법을 배웁니다. 청소년의 마음을 이해하고 내면에서부터 변화를 일으키는 푸른나무 재단의 생애주기 프로그램은 한 그루의 나무가 숲을 이루듯 한 명의 행복한 청소년이 모여 세상을 변화시킨다는 믿음에서 시작합니다. 그렇다면 청소년이 행복하게 자라기 위해서는 무엇이 필요할까요? 상담 치유, 교육 미래, 장학 나눔, 연구 정책 제안, 비폭력 문화운동 국제. 푸른나무 재단은 5가지 핵심 활동을 통해 청소년이 행복한 세상을 만들어갑니다.
제 마음을 알아줬으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 전국 학교폭력 상담 전화 1588-9128을 시작으로 학교폭력에 대한 상담이 전무했던 시절부터 지금까지 아이들의 마음을 보듬는 상담 사업을 진행하고 있습니다. 마음속 상처를 치유하는 상담 활동은 아이들이 시련을 극복하고 다시 희망을 꿈꿀 수 있도록 지원합니다.
함께 행복하게 자라는 법을 배웠으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 교실의 아이들을 학교폭력 방관자가 아닌 적극적인 예방자로 기르는 학교폭력 예방교육에서 시작해 아이들이 행복하게 성장하는 데 꼭 필요한 소통과 진로 프로그램을 지원합니다.
제 꿈을 응원해줬으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 모든 청소년이 환경과 관계없이 자유롭게 꿈꾸고 배우도록 후원자들과의 다양한 나눔 행사를 통해 청소년이 경제적 걱정 없이 자신의 미래를 설계하도록 돕는 장학재단을 운영하고 있습니다.
우리 문제를 같이 고민해줬으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 학교 폭력에 대한 인식이 부족했던 시절부터 꾸준한 연구를 진행하여 청소년에게 꼭 필요한 정책과 제도에 대해 발언해 왔습니다. 한국 최초로 청소년 대상 학교 폭력 실태 조사를 실시하고 47만 명 시민의 서명을 모아 학교 폭력 예방과 대책에 관한 법률이 제정되도록 제안했습니다.
싸우지 않는 세상이 되었으면 좋겠어요.
푸른나무 재단은 학교 폭력의 근본적인 해결을 위해서는 사회 문화가 바뀌어야 한다고 믿습니다. 우리 사회 전체가 비폭력 문화를 지향하도록 꾸준히 캠페인 활동을 진행하며 UN 글로벌 컴팩트 회원으로서 세계와 함께 청소년이 더 행복한 세상을 만들기 위해 고민하고 있습니다. 푸른나무 재단의 모든 활동은 청소년의 아픔을 외면하지 않은 후원자 여러분 덕분에 가능했습니다. 후원자의 따뜻한 마음은 푸른나무 재단의 활동을 가능하게 하고 청소년의 상처를 치유하고 희망을 열어주는 빛이 됩니다. 아무도 돌아보지 않았던 청소년의 아픔, 푸른나무 재단의 꾸준한 활동으로 학교 폭력은 서서히 줄어들었고 아이들이 좀 더 안전한 환경에서 성장할 수 있게 됐습니다. 그러나 최근 학교 폭력의 저연령화, 사이버 폭력과 성폭력의 증가로 우리 아이들은 다시 위협받고 있습니다. 아직도 많은 청소년이 도움을 필요로 하고 있습니다. 어려움에 처한 아이들에게 희망을 주는 푸른 별이 되어 주십시오.
학교 폭력 더 이상 방관해서는 안 됩니다. 지금 여러분도 함께 하실 수 있습니다.
청소년이 희망을 꿈꾸는 폭력 없는 세상을 만듭니다. 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
아이들이 보내는 도움의 신호들 외면하지 말고 손 내밀어 주세요.
청소년 여러분들 화이팅입니다.
청소년 여러분 화이팅!
외면하지 말고 지켜주세요.
모두 행복한 세상을 위해
우리의 푸른 나무가 되어주세요. 청소년을 지키는 푸른 나무가 되어주세요.
지금 청소년의 푸른 나무가 되어 주세요.
So I need your attention here, okay? We're going to talk about sustainable development.
I would say the vision of the World Youth Alliance is of personal excellence. You see all of these young people from all around the world. They care about others, they care about the world.
We all have the same mission because we all want to change the world. We all want to change our societies.
everyone's talking about human rights, but no one knows why they're protecting them.
They're looking for answers. Who am I? Do I actually matter?
How can I really implement human dignity in my day-to-day life?
Just that idea that if you believe in something enough and you work hard enough, you can really change the world with something as simple as the idea of the dignity of the human person.
If you can teach people lessons of human dignity, there will be a lot less massacres or genocide. Which is why principles that YA stands for, which is equality and dignity for every human being, is very important. Because unless you know why you're fighting for something, I don't think that goal can be achieved in the short term or even in the long term.
YA is really making me see the beauty in a person despite everything else and making it something more than just ideology or a theory, putting it into practice and really kind of starting a revolution.
I think there is an urgency in terms of artwork. I don't see anyone else doing the work the World Youth Alliance is doing. Freedom is this huge burden of responsibility, but also power in that sense that through ideas you're shaping your surroundings and trying to sculpt them towards something better.
Human dignity is how he is to improve himself for what is true and what is beautiful.
It's definitely an urgent time to point out those inconsistencies in our different ideologies and show that we need to be consistently affirming the value of human life at all levels, otherwise we all become vulnerable.
Organizations like World Youth Alliance have to exist because there's a constant need for someone to stand up for the little guy, the person that has no voice, and that's what World Youth Alliance does.
Thank you for coming, everyone. We will about to start in a minute. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us from all around the world. It is a great pleasure to invite you here at the side events on another pandemic, current situation and solution to youth emotional poverty caused by cyber violence. My name is Jisung Lee, a chief researcher, and I represent the Blue Tree Foundation. For a short announcement, this event will be recorded. And it is now being live streamed on the YouTube channel of the Blue Tree Foundation and UN Webcast. Again, on behalf of the Blue Tree Foundation and the World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific, I'm happy to meet you at today's side event. After the 20th century, globalization and the IT revolution united the world and brought a convenient life. Although these phenomena highlighted various traditional problems like poverty, hunger, and violence, the world has been getting over with shared goals such as Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals. However, COVID-19 once again exacerbated all these problems and has been interrupting achieving the 2030 agenda. Children and youth are the hidden victims of the pandemic. In 2020, 150 million were pushed into multidimensional poverty due to the COVID-19. And the loss of education, disruptions in routine immunization, loss of parents and caregivers negatively impacted their mental health and dignity. The damage is severe in education, which is one of the prime themes of Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals. Pandemic digitalized many areas of education, and the start of online education further promoted the use of digital devices of born digital. Online education has the advantage of reducing school violence to some degree due to the decrease of face-to-face education, but also became a reason for the increase in cyber violence, a new type of violence among youth. Cyberbullying increased by 70% during the pandemic in Arizona, the US, and last year, the National Crime Records Bureau of India announced that cyberbullying and cyberstalking reports for children in the Maharashtra region registered the maximum number of cases. The worsened situation of cyber violence can also be seen in the results of a survey conducted nationwide by the Blue Tree Foundation. The cyber violence victim rate, which was 5.3% of the total school violence victim rate in 2019, has more than tripled since COVID-19, reaching 16.3% in 2020. COVID-19 not only pushed millions of youths into material poverty, but also made them suffer from emotional poverty, such as depression, anxiety, and suicide. But cyber violence, which causes emotional poverty, cannot be solved by one person or one nation. Like the whole world has strived to decrease material poverty, it is necessary to seek solutions and endeavor through multilateral partnerships to eradicate youth emotional poverty. The Blue Tree Foundation, formerly the Foundation for Preventing Youth Violence, also has been working to eradicate school violence and cyber violence in South Korea for 27 years. And the World Youth Alliance is a global coalition of young people committed to promoting the dignity of the person among youth from developed and developing nations. Today, we hope to foster the discussion on cyber violence with an emphasis on youth emotional poverty, so that we can find out solutions to prevent cyber violence for youth's right to be safe and happy. Now, allow me to welcome the distinguished panelists for today. Please welcome Mr. Miko Superable, who is Regional Director of World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific. He's based in Manila, Philippines, and has a background in communications, advertising, and film. He has been involved with the organization since 2014 and director since 2019. We are also pleased to have Mr. Klein Abrahana, Director of Operations of World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific. He's based in Quezon City, Philippines, and has a background in behavioral sciences focusing in organizational and social systems development. Klein got involved with WYA in 2016 and joined as Director of Operations in 2021. Also, the researcher of Cyber SOS Center of the Blue Tree Foundation, Ms. Jian Lee, is joining us for the event. She majored in Latin American regional studies and aims to create a better world for everyone. Next, we're representing Korean youth representatives from the Blue Tree Foundation. We have some amazing youth panelists for today's event. Seon Hong, Seung Lee, and Seung Lee will be the speakers, and Dongyeon Kim, In Kyung Seo, Jaehyun Lee, Da Hyung Song, and Minju Kim also supported preparing for the speech and joined today. Finally, we have Seungyeon Kim, researcher of the Blue Tree Foundation, as a technician for today's event. Let's start with our youth panelists first. Let's share about the problems the youths are actually facing and share the solutions in youth perspectives first. We are delighted to invite Seon Hong. Seon's topic is forms of cyber violence by platform and the effects of cyber violence on youth. Seon, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Seoyeon Hong, a high school sophomore from South Korea and a representative speaker on behalf of the Blue Tree Foundation. First and foremost, I want to take this opportunity to express my thanks for inviting our organization to participate in this conference. The unprecedented outbreak of COVID-19 has led to a significant decrease in face-to-face interactions and has instead normalized interacting with one another virtually or online. What had only existed in the physical world pre-pandemic, such as workplaces and classrooms, now simultaneously exist in the cyberspace. The disappearance of conventional constraints of time and space online has further enabled individuals to freely express their opinions on cultural, social, and political issues through various platforms. However, what should be noted ahead of these positive effects are the negative effects and damage that has been brought alongside it, one of which being the increase in cyber violence. Thus, we would like to address the most common forms of cyber violence that occur on social media platforms and the subsequent mental and emotional poverty among youth. The first aspect of cyber violence on social media platforms is subposts, more commonly referred to as sniper posts in Korea. These are posts that defame the victim in a vaguely specific way. They do not mention the victim's name directly, but only insinuate their identity using their initials or by explaining the particular situation. Thus, while the parties involved can actually identify the person in question, it is difficult for those who are unrelated to do so. These posts are specifically designed this way so that the perpetrators can easily escape punishment by arguing that the defamatory post was not directed at the victim. The second type of cyber violence occurs through messenger functions such as Facebook Messenger and Instagram Direct Messenger. Here, a variety of forms of cyber violence occur. Unwanted leakage and distribution of private photos occur through private messages. Victims are also often subject to continuous verbal abuse and regularly receive threatening, hateful messages, often including profanity and vilification. In 2021, a 15-year-old middle school student in Korea who had been suffering from bullying on and offline continuously received insulting as well as intimidating messages from a bully, such as, "I want to drag your face across the asphalt road," through Facebook Messenger, which led her to commit suicide. The third pattern occurs in the form of hate comments. Not only does this form of cyber violence occur towards celebrities, it is also prevalent among youth. In 2018, a 15-year-old middle school student in South Korea committed suicide after receiving a wave of hateful comments from her peers about her previous relationship. Hundreds of hateful comments can lead to serious mental health issues and emotional poverty for the victim, especially if they're adolescents. Such forms of cyber violence, as can be seen from these specific cases, can lead to the mental and emotional poverty of youth. Adolescents who are targeted via cyberbullying report increased depressive affect, anxiety, loneliness, suicidal behavior, and somatic symptoms. In fact, researchers who have studied the correlation between the involvement of adolescents in cyber violence and self-esteem found that both the victims and the perpetrators have lower self-esteem than the adolescents who are not. Moreover, cyber violence can be particularly dangerous for children and adolescents who have traumatic experiences. The overall harmful effect that cyber violence has on the mental and emotional health of adolescents has been exacerbated with the increase in cyber violence cases due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The role of the platform has also expanded as adolescents' use of social media has increased rapidly. As social media platforms are implementing policies to prevent cyberbullying using advanced technology, the importance of informing users on precautions in using the platform should be emphasized. In addition, technology cross-support or cooperative development between platforms should be carried out in the international community to promote ways to utilize the use of virtual space peacefully and wisely. In terms of national cooperation, it is necessary to lead peace in the cyberspace by devising common policies and seeking ways to prevent harm to youth and reduce damage. Before I end my speech, I want to thank the Commission of Social Development, the Blue Tree Foundation, and most of all, my group members, Dong-hyun Kim and In Kyung-seo, who made this speech possible. Thank you.
Thank you for starting today's first speech. Now we'll move to Seung-ah Lee. Seung-ah will talk about my experience of cyberviolence and countermeasures to alleviate intensified cyberviolence. Seung-ah, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Seung-ah Lee, a youth representative of the Blue Tree Foundation and a high school junior. I'll present a speech regarding my personal experience of cyberviolence and suggestions of countermeasures to alleviate intensified cyberviolence after COVID-19 that I have written with my teammate Jaehyun Lee. I would like to start by sharing the cyberviolence that Jaehyun, my teammate, personally experienced. In 2018, Jaehyun was cyberbullied through KakaoTalk, a South Korean chat-type social media. The cyberviolence that he experienced was KakaoTalk group chat bullying. He was constantly exposed to verbal abuse of numerous perpetrators in a group chat and underwent severe mental suffering and emotional poverty. Therefore, we believe that cyberviolence, which harms our mental health, should be eradicated to ensure the achievement of SDG 3. Jaehyun reported his case to the police and received a public apology, but one of the perpetrators continued to bully him. Through such behavior from the perpetrator, even after reporting, we came to realize that effective education, reasonable perpetrator punishment, and further emotional counseling for victims are all important. 3 years later, Jaehyun joined the Seodaemun Police Station's Youth Policy Advisory Group and transformed video preventative education into interactive plays. Plays were proposed as alternative education measures because they are interactive rather than one-sided and passive, like how the original education videos were. The students wrote their own play scenarios, consulted experts and teachers, and implemented the play. In doing so, they developed a much deeper understanding and interest for the issue compared to video education from the past. Thus, we believe that interactive learning can be effective in raising awareness. To prevent more victims like Jaehyun from appearing, we believe that strong judicial systems must focus on establishing effective policies for perpetrator punishment as well, as proposed by SDG60. Research from Korea's Ministry of Education revealed that 12.3% of all types of school bullying were cyberbullying, which showed a noticeable increase from 2019, showing how COVID severely exacerbated cyberviolence. Light also discovered in 2020 that there was a 70% increase in teenagers' hate speech in online chats, a 40% increase in hate on gaming platforms, and a 900% increase in racially discriminatory speech on Twitter, showing a significant threat to SDG number 10. So why are youth so vulnerable to cyberviolence? One significant reason is that cybercrimes, especially when conducted by minors, are not given adequate punishment. In many countries like Korea, Belgium, or the US, juvenile law weakens punishment for young perpetrators. These days, teenagers are mentally maturing faster than ever before by acquiring information through various media. The Juvenile Act was enacted to help children grow up soundly, but the results were counteractive. According to the 2019 youth statistics, violent incidents for minors increased 11.3% compared to 2016. Consequences can be good, especially for early crimes, because that is when it can actually help young people change and grow for the better. We hope that through appropriate punishment, everyone will be judged fairly, not by age, but by the gravity of the crimes committed and the pain that victims felt. According to Dr. Ruby Payne's work on understanding poverty, emotional poverty has been defined as an absence of emotional resilience or resources and emotional distress. To support victims so that they can recover resiliently, counseling policies and community support must also be developed. For instance, counselors in Canada and Turkey have stated that developing an anti-cyberbullying infused curriculum would better prepare them for cyberviolence victims, according to Thomas et al. 2011. We believe that implementation of such education for everyone can create a supportive and caring community, which will help eradicate this issue at the grassroots level. To combat this widespread societal virus and mental deprivation, there must be joint effort from various state and non-state actors across borders. Thus, we would like to ask everyone to recognize cyberviolence and join us, the Blue Tree Foundation, in tackling it. In particular, We implore the UN as a uniquely neutral intergovernmental organization to address cyberviolence, another virus that we cannot overlook. Thank you.
Thank you for your words, Seung-eun. Now we'll move to our last youth panel, Seung-eun Lee. Seung-eun will present Addressing Cyberviolence in Social Media Platforms Through Partnership and Youth Participation. Seung-eun, you may speak now.
Hello, we're representatives of the Blue Tree Foundation, Seung-eun Lee and Dayang Song. I'm Seung-eun Lee, a sophomore from South Korea and a representative speaker on the behalf of the Blue Tree Foundation. When Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook, or Jack Dorsey founded Twitter, would any have imagined that social media would become the fertile ground for cyberviolence? The unique features of social media distinguish cyberbullying from the traditional face-to-face bullying. As such, my friend Yain likely experienced cyberviolence attributed to anonymity. The anonymity enabled perpetrators to send grossly indecent and obscene comments through a social network site called Ask.fm that sexually harassed Yain without the fear of accountability. The point is that Yain and I were just ordinary teenagers who enjoyed using social media, but also who became the victim and witness of cyberviolence. What's more alarming is that ordinary teenagers are not provincial, but indeed global. A 12-year-old American girl named Gabrielle Molina took her life after enduring relentless online bullying. A 17-year-old girl in Canada named Rete Parsons committed suicide as she was experiencing cybersexual abuse by 4 boys. A 14-year-old girl in Britain named Hannah Smith committed suicide as she was bullied on Ask.fm. Issues regarding cyberviolence, especially via social network platforms, are no longer their story. It's our story, and it's our problem we ought to resolve. It is a paramount task assigned to all people, and solving it will be a prerequisite to ensure everyone's well-being and dignity in the digital epoch, which will continue to develop in the aftermath of COVID-19. The problem, however, goes beyond one nation's borders. Simply put, nations' challenges in addressing cyberviolence on social media are compounded as most popular platforms are multinational corporations. They're significantly more difficult for nations to regulate because they operate outside of national legal jurisdiction and often defy compliance with government policies that vary by countries. This is as exemplified by the statement from the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General for Business and Human Rights, John Ruggie, who highlighted the problem with scale mismatch, whereby the effects of multinational corporations are global, but the authority is largely out of the hands of national governments. We believe that there exists discrepancies between different regulations and legislations among countries. It will be the key for countries and corporations to sit around the table and negotiate and fill in crucial loopholes. We think regular and cooperative negotiations among these actors would pave the way for solutions that will hopefully reach a certain extent of consensus. Therefore, our solutions center around SDG60, partnership. First of all, we call for partnership within nations. Multilateral cooperation is essential for fostering a friendly international climate that will set the tone for combating cyberviolence. A global political bloc like the UN is a legitimate governing body that enables multilateral cooperation and multilateral discourse. Moreover, cooperation within nations is indispensable to conduct joint research and share successful precedents. Second, we call for cooperation between governments and multinational corporations. By law, companies are also people, namely legal persons. Corporations are also expected to follow a certain conduct in a society as members of the community. Multinational corporations should be more exact in their policies and develop concrete steps to combat cyberviolence. Last but not least, with more concerns to SDGs 3 well-being and SDGs 4 education, we suggest holding an international educational workshop that entails participation and emotional exchange among youth. Emotional exchanges and solidarity can be a way to understand each other's feelings and eventually prevent cyberviolence. Through educational workshops, the youth can create a network by sharing their experience with cyberviolence and come up with practical solutions as they themselves have felt the problems and seriousness in the field. A representative example would be the GG crew by the Blue Tree Foundation. GG Crew is a youth educational club that enables youth to raise campaigns with the common goal of preventing cyberbullying while encouraging public participation for such prevention. In this respect, we propose to expand programs like the GG Crew to a larger scale with more educational activities. We look to invite youth from different countries and institutions all around the world related to cyber violence, so to present suggestions to social media companies or governments in the workshop. This will eventually allow the sharing of pragmatic solutions from the youth perspective and disseminating educational curriculum on cyber violence prevention worldwide. The existing cyber violence countermeasure was limited to a platform that simply reports the issues. But we'd like to go one step further by holding a global youth workshop and thereby establishing a lasting social safety net so that youth can make their voice matter to demonstrate a safe mobile environment for everyone. Thank you for listening.
We thank you for your speech, Seung-eun. Now we'll move to Mr. Miko Superabile, the Regional Director of World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific. Mr. Superabile, the floor is yours. Please go ahead, starting your speech when you're ready.
All right. Sorry about that, you guys. I hope you guys can see my screen now. Good evening to all of us here in Asia Pacific. Good morning and afternoon to the rest of the world who's tuned into this broadcast. My name is Miko Superable. I'm the Regional Director of World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific, coming to you guys from Manila. And I am beyond honored to not only be speaking at this forum, connecting with young people from South Korea and beyond, but to also have experience co-hosting this event with our good friends from the Blue Tree Foundation, Jisang and Jion, who have done tremendous work in addressing cyber violence in their community. So our organization is called World Youth Alliance, and as the title of my presentation suggests, we believe that investing in young people for the development of our nation is crucial in order for us to address the issues of development all over the world. And to do this, we must make sure that young people are taken care of and allowed to flourish as human people. We are World Youth Alliance, or WYA for short, a global coalition of young people ages 10 to 30 years old. We were founded in 1999 at the United Nations as a response to flawed youth policies, such as the deletion of parental rights, unrestrained sexual rights, and abortion for children. World Youth Alliance was founded at the recognition that these proposals did not represent the billions of young people in the world whose flourishing and potential is stymied by very foundational problems such as hunger, lack of clean water, housing, violence, and lack of opportunities to get an education. Since 1999, our organization has inspired millions and has grown tenfold. With 6 official offices globally. Here in Asia Pacific, our office is actually here in Manila, where I and my co-director, who will be speaking later, are currently residing. Our mission is simple but powerful. Our mission is to promote the dignity of the person in policy and culture. We do this through helping young people and young leaders understand 2 basic things. What is the worth of a human person? And of country, race, economic status, or any human category. The second is policy. specifically person-centered policy, which reflects the responsibility of the state, schools, other institutions involved in human rights to protect that dignity, because human dignity grants human rights. Human dignity answers the question, why should we take care of others as well? This idea, this perspective of inherent dignity is incredibly crucial for the development and flourishing of our children. This idea promotes the idea that children, us, young people, are worthy, an end in itself. No human category, no standard of beauty makes us any less of a person. You'll be surprised to know how many, simply from conversations with young people that we had on ground, have no such foundation of self. Unfortunately, this value of dignity is not a lived reality in many parts of our world. People are neglected, objectified, seen as objects and not people with value. These are most powerfully seen in instances of rampant and cyclical poverty, rape, nations penchant for war and ideology, systemic abuse and human extortion and human trafficking. There's a great need for us to look at other issues that humans deal with where they are not seen as beautiful and with worth. This is where issues like cyberbullying comes into play. As you've seen in previous presentations, it has taken on a new form during the pandemic and has caused what experts are calling emotional poverty. Involved are children who are not given the proper avenue, the proper space to express themselves. Technology may be involved, but at the core of cyberbullying is the people who are the victims and the people who perpetrate this behavior. This is also rooted in many familial conflict and feelings of sheer mental distress. Young people, you and me, and all humans are born with the capacity to love and be creative citizens in the world. This is a fundamental objective value that is enshrined in international law and human rights. To respect the dignity and acknowledge the dignity of humans is committing ourselves to the idea that humans, children, are not objects that we simply can discard. We don't treat humans the way we treat inanimate objects. We have a responsibility to love them and make them feel whole, to foster conversations and creativity. These are values and knowledge that young people should know at a young age. Why is the rearing of our children important? Because human dignity is central to sustainable development. We've seen how terrible devastation happens when people are not at the center of law. Sustainable development, long-term development, where economic, social, and environmental concerns are all addressed equally, requires that we invest in people, human capital, to see people as not objects, but as fully dimensional people who have the capacity to be problem solvers. Humans are never the problem. People are holistic, meaning they have dimensions, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And at the core of these are principles of leadership and value. This is not realized at all when young people are at the center of war, at home and at school. How do we tell people of their importance when they are in the middle of crisis, or when they do not know what friendship means, or when they succumb to thinking that other people are less worthy than them? How do we take care of our young people? In order for us to flourish and address these issues, we must place urgent priority on the delivery of these three things. The first is the provision of one's basic necessities and opportunities: food, shelter, clothing, opportunities for work and education that are not hindered by race, religion, or economic status. These will pave the way for safe spaces where children grow to become excellent friends and family for their community. Second is better policies in society where lawmakers see the person at the center of concern. This is to prevent any sort of trafficking, cyberbullying, and crime. Finally, there needs to be a focus on delivering these values to schools, proper curriculums to be in place where young people can learn about themselves and their inherent worth. The World Youth Alliance is in solidarity with the Blue Tree Foundation in advocating for the decrease in school violence, because we must ensure that our young people are growing happily, learning how to be a good person, learning how to be taken care of mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally for the development of our countries. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for providing us a broad perspective, Mr. Superabile. Now we'll move to Mr. Klein Aburhana, Director of Operations of World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific. Mr. Aburhana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jason, for the introduction. Greetings to all. I'm pleased to be here today, graced by everyone's presence, and it's truly an honor to talk about dignity education and how this is pivotal in eliminating cyberbullying and improving mental health among the youth. So we want to begin by sharing this very famous proverb. I got curious and looked up on where this could have probably originated from, and actually found a few sources indicating that it is actually an ancient African proverb. Others say it's from the Native Americans. But regardless, I'm pretty certain that this is something that we can all resonate with and agree with. So in the next few slides, I'll be sharing how this proverb is actually relevant to our topic today. According to UNESCO, cyberbullying is a kind of social violence that takes a lot of forms to deliberately hurt, humiliate, or harass others online. Cyberviolence is most often than not a concern that's not always being talked about. However, in a consultative paper published by the United Nations Study on Violence Against Children, it particularly highlighted how the acknowledgement that bullying, particularly cyberbullying, constitutes a concern of global relevance. And so given this, the paper underpinned how parents, educators, and lawmakers should actually ramp up efforts to prevent and address it. So to begin, we'll have an overview of data related to cyberbullying among the youth, and then afterwards, I'll share how dignity education through a program that we implement here in World Youth Alliance is revolutionary and impactful in terms of proactively addressing cyber violence. So what do we know about cyberbullying, even before the onset of the pandemic? Let's take a look as far as 9 years ago through a journal published by the Association of Asian Studies about cyberbullying, where they underpinned the magnitude of information and communications technology, or ICT, usage in Asia, and how this relates to cyber violence specifically among the youth, being a critical issue in many Asian countries. When the journal was published in 2013, China, Singapore, and India reported to have the highest incidences of online bullying, followed by Malaysia, Pakistan, and Japan. But even in smaller countries like Fiji and the Philippines, online bullying remains prevalent. In studies conducted by the University of South Pacific and UNICEF in these countries respectively, both highlighted how it is not uncommon for young people to experience cyberbullying. In the Philippines, 2019 data show that cyberbullying affects almost half of children aged 13 to 17. Fast forward to where we are right now. In a sociological research conducted at the University of Jordan just last year in April, cyberbullying has become more apparent in the form of social stigma and discrimination, particularly among East and Southeast Asian youth, as they felt blamed and accused by their aggressors for the spread of COVID-19. With all of these chunks of data and research, should we be alarmed? Definitely yes. In 2019, they published research at the Journal of Medical Internet Research. Youth who experience cyberbullying are at greater risk than those who don't to inflict self-harm and even consider taking their own life. So what now can we do? One of our initiatives in World Youth Alliance is dignity education through our Human Dignity Curriculum. The Human Dignity Curriculum, or HDC, is a unique, innovative, and research and evidence-based education program catered to young students from kindergarten to grade 12 and out of school youth, where we teach them about having a strong sense of self through the lens of their inherent dignity. Globally, for the past decade, the program has proven to be undeniably relevant and helpful in empowering the youth. When early pilots were implemented in North America, Latin America, and the Asia Pacific, there was no doubt the program has shown significance and impact the lives of young people. Expectedly, the program reached more. It was no surprise that it eventually found itself inspiring more children in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. The HDC is a community-based, innovative, and holistic educational program that does not only involve youth, but most importantly, their parents, teachers, and even community leaders. The program encourages peer-to-peer learning among students in the aim of strengthening their sense of self and community, tackling concepts of terrorism, solidarity, friendship, and love, among many others, the HTC intends to inspire its students to form excellent and healthy decision-making habits. One of the implementations we're currently rolling out is a modular learning setup. It's always been inspiring to read our students' modules, an example of which, as you can see on the screen. Since 2011, the HTC has been making strides globally into empowering our youth to always have a solid foundation of who they are and who they can be, by accompanying them in their transformative years to understand human dignity, personal identity, principled freedom, and respect for self and others. We can encourage them to always make excellent choices. To cap everything off, emotional poverty brought about by cyberbullying is only one among the many challenges that the HTC can address. In unprecedented times like where we currently are, all the more we should scale up initiatives and programs that put our youth, the human person, at the center. Only when our youth recognize they have dignity can they remain steadfast amidst this phenomenon. And most importantly, it is only when our young people acknowledge that their peers are worthy to be loved and respected, regardless of circumstance, can they achieve emotional stability and genuine flourishing. If we want long-term and sustainable progress in combating emotional poverty caused by cyberbullying, together with the Fuji Foundation, we should start collaborating and become a village for our youth, investing on their formation to be conscientious dignity defenders. Thank you very much for your time and kind attention.
Thank you for the words, Mr. Abrahena. Now we'll move to our last panel, Ms. Jian Lee, researcher of the Blue Tree Foundation. She will talk about the solutions to youth cyber violence. Ms. Lee, you may have the floor.
Good day, everyone. I am Jian Lee, a researcher of the Cyber SO Center at the Blue Tree Foundation, and I am so honored to be here to talk about solutions to youth cyber violence. What can we do to eradicate cyber violence? The Blue Tree Foundation thought about how to eradicate cyber violence effectively, considering the traits of youth cyber violence. And we now propose the Blue Elephant as a way for preventing and solving youth cyber violence. The Blue Elephant is a multilateral cooperation model of civil society, government, enterprise, studies, youth and their surrounders, and the global network. It includes 5 detailed projects: preventive education, counseling and healing, culture spreading, research and international network, and platform. They are to precisely figure out the current situation and eradicate youth cyber violence. Let's take a look at some examples. Establishing policies and laws is the most important thing to prevent cyber violence because policies formed at the national level last long, not temporal. However, although cases of cyber violence are skyrocketing day by day, policies and laws still consider cyberspace a spatial area, which interrupts the development of laws for cyber violence. There are not many cases of legislation related to cyber violence, especially law specialized in youth cyber violence. Last year, the world's first cyberbullying law was enacted in Australia. And in 2008, in the United States, attempts were made to legislate punishment against cyberbullying by enacting the Megan Meyer Cyberbullying Prevention Act under the Federal Criminal Act. But it was thwarted due to the freedom of speech. In South Korea, each law defines cyber violence differently, and some laws are at odds. The Blue Tree Foundation is trying to propose the revision of laws and establish a system for preventing and responding to cyber violence by using studies conducted by the Blue Tree Foundation and university institutions, such as a study on policy and practical implications for prevention of youth cyber violence, and basic study for developing cyber violence examination tool. Thus, we need to redefine cyber violence under the current situation and apply to the related policies and laws. We are now trying to legislate cyber violence laws with members of the National Assembly and call for enactment for use. To prevent youth cyber violence, we must not be bystanders. We have to let the legislators know the current situation of cyber violence, who have a big influence on society, and endeavor all together at the national level and international level through establishing integrated laws and policies. Then now we might have a question. Can we just put all the activities for preventing youth cyber violence in one place? Use of digital era are used to the online world as well as the offline world, and they embrace and use everything they see online. Now, many countries are launching applications targeting youth cyber violence and youth violence, considering these features. For example, in Ireland, there's an online tool called Speak Out, which is used to report incidents of violence or harassment anonymously. In Michigan, the United States, they operate OK to Say to report criminal activities or potential harm to school employees and school safety. Both platforms commonly feature that anyone can quickly report the internet through the internet, since cyber violence can happen anytime, anywhere. The Blue Elephant established a mobile platform for anti-violence, offering services like reporting, education, counseling, culture, and policy. The victims of cyber violence can ask for help 24/7 anonymously with the application, and we offer additional phone or face-to-face counseling if needed. All people can take lectures on preventing cyber violence, which is used inside school education as well. They can also spread nonviolence culture through signing the public nonviolence campaign and even propose a new policy or law. It is a platform where we can actually feel the difference, not just simply using it. And the cute elephant character Puko and mobile application make it easier for use to access. We hope to provide this platform worldwide, which is designed considering the traits of youth nowadays, spread nonviolence culture, and eradicate youth cyber violence problem. So far, I have talked about the current situation of youth cyber violence and ways to prevent it through spreading culture, policies, and platforms. Youth cyber violence, which has become severe after COVID-19, causes emotional poverty and loss of human dignity to those involved, and tackles achieving social development. It is also closely related to sustainable development goals in that it worsens poverty and well-being and requires policies and partnerships to solve. Now it is time to discuss eradicating cyber violence for the dignity and well-being of youth and sustainable development. The complete disappearance of cyberbullying is impossible since the internet and digital are everywhere after the accelerated digitization during the pandemic. However, if we improve our awareness of cyber violence, it will be possible to prevent, detect it in advance, and respond to it at the first step. Like other governments and NGOs of the world, the Korean government and civil society are also striving to strengthen education on online safety and revise policies on cyber violence. Along with these efforts, the Blue Tree Foundation will work hard to eradicate youth cyber violence in South Korea and all over the world through the right understanding of the current situation and youth cyber violence and global partnership. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your inspiring speech, Ms. Lee. We will now open up the panel discussion. We have wonderful panelists for the discussion. Please welcome with us. We will discuss with the panels on 3 topics today. This is the first topic. What is the first point in the international community that needs to be agreed first to solve the youth cyber violence? If any panel is ready, please share your opinion.
Hello, I'm Seung-Eun Lee from the Blue Tree Foundation. I want to propose 2 ideas for this question. First is the clarification among the definition of cyber violence. As cyber violence is a form of unseen violence happening in the virtual world, it may be difficult for many to grasp or define the concept of cyber violence and where to draw the line between playful conversations and hurtful cyber violence. And that is why I believe that the international community needs to reach upon a consensus among the exact definition of cyber violence that is universally applicable. And second is the regular and active participation from the international community. Because cyber violence usually happens online on social media platforms, the decision-making processes involved with regulating cyber violence must include multiple stakeholders. And that is why I believe that multilateral cooperation and multilateral discourse would be the key to combat cyber violence that prevails in many parts of the world.
Cooperation within various nations, civil society, and private organizations is indispensable, as the process of identifying and regulating cyber violence is in a wide sea of information will most likely require significant funding, personal as well as training. And that is why all actors must come together and agree on how to best regulate cyber violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific?
Yeah, so I guess in addition to what's already been said, the international community must really place importance on values education. So studies show that really having this great personal identity and a foundation of oneself is key to better decision-making habits, but it's actually not enough to just implement this, right? So we must look to the values education content and the manner with which communities all over the world really conducts these classes. Oftentimes, and we see this in a lot of Western countries, certainly here in the Philippines and other parts of Asia, we deprioritize values education and really only spend an hour or two a week focusing on this, but really see flourishing in that hour or two is spent very wastefully. So oftentimes there's no interaction, and it's always just used as free time or break time. But these are important values that really have to be ingrained in our kids. And I guess on top of the content, the infrastructure has to be there to make sure this is in place. So the international community really has to come up with a system to bring this curriculum to teachers in the communities themselves, and training these teachers and making sure that we surround our young people with responsible adults who they can really look up to and look to in and beyond their immediate families. And finally, we here at World Youth Alliance really place importance in strengthening the family unit itself and rallying the immediate environment of the child to the development of the child. The right of the parents, not a lot of people know this, in a child's life is actually enshrined and recognized in international law. And it makes sense that each child has a right to a parent growing up. So to be able to find a curriculum or build a program that fosters parents' involvement, to take care of children who have neglecting parents or who don't have parents, to build a program for them, to train these teachers and parents, brothers and sisters to be examples to their kids at home and in school, in the playground, is very important for the international community to focus on.
Thank you. Let's move on to the second topic. Recently, some countries have established schools that provide financial rewards to students who provide useful information, such as reporting cyber violence cases. Do you think these monetary rewards are effective? Please speak if any panel is ready.
I'd like to take this one. So I believe that financial compensation may be effective for encouraging the students involved in or bystanding cyber violence cases to report such cases. So we can hope that such financial incentives will urge more students to be whistleblowers and voice their concerns about cyber violence happening within the school. So such information coming directly from students may be really helpful because external monitoring is especially difficult for cyber violence happening among teenagers. But at the same time, this may be a double-edged sword because the credibility of information may decrease if a financial incentive is given to the reporters. Students may give false or misleading information just to get the money. They could make up a cyber violence case, for example. In theory, this may be a good idea, but in reality, this may not be a very effective solution, as students who don't want to provide information most likely never will, even with the added financial incentive. And students who decide to provide information always will, even without such encouragement. I think reporting cyber violence will be better boosted through community support and encouragement rather than a financial incentive.
Thank you for your response. Anyone else from the World Youth Alliance, Asia Pacific?
Yes. While it is good that we have initiatives like this, to prevent and curtail cyberbullying, I think that in the long term, we have to adapt a more sustainable step on how to address this. And by doing that, we have to be able to refocus and recalibrate on how we actually educate and invest on education of our youth. And this eventually would go back, to how we should design our educational programs, which is hinged on the dignity of the human person. And not just that, but we have to be able to involve not just the youth themselves, but also the communities that they grow in. So the schools, their teachers, their parents, most importantly, because for this particular issue or crisis to be addressed, it is important that we involve not just the victims or the perpetrators themselves, but everyone around them. And so by doing that, we have to be able to refocus on our strategies that are more long-term and not simply band-aid solutions, like compensating them for reporting. And that should be, and so therefore that should be based on educating our youth more efficiently and more effectively, that's focused on the dignity of the human person.
Thank you, Mr. Abrahena. Let's move on to the last topic. This question is especially for the youth panels in South Korea. Currently in Korea, preventive education for school violence is mandatory once a semester by law. What are the advantages, regrets, and improvements of this preventive education?
So currently in South Korea, bullying prevention education is mandatory for all schools, and it has to take place once every semester. While the number of hours for bullying prevention education the school needs to provide students is fixed, the form of education is left up to the school's discretion. The reality is, however, that most schools offer lectures by instructors from related organizations or simply showing bullying prevention videos. I think the fact that the bullying prevention education takes place regularly is one of the positive aspects of the current system, as repeated education is significantly more effective than one-time classes in instilling awareness about school violence and bullying within students. On the other hand, this also serves as a negative, since it also means that students take similar bullying prevention classes with a similar format, similar content every semester. This results in only a few students truly focusing on the material, with the others barely listening. Thus, I think diversifying both the format and the content in which the bullying prevention education takes place is needed for increased effectiveness. For instance, the format should be one that requires active participation of students, such as debate or plays, for example, rather than passively watching videos. The content should also be more diverse by pertaining to various aspects of bullying and its prevention, as well as going more in depth as the students advance to higher grade levels. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll ask other youth representatives who wants to speak besides the panels. Please tell us your opinion briefly about this topic.
Hello, I'm Nayoung Song, a student representative from the Blue Tree Foundation. The good aspect of the education system regarding the cyber violence in Korea is that education guidelines classify the participants and the method. Representative, there is a program to visit each school and then give a prevention education conducted by Blue Tree Foundation. Since Blue Tree Foundation visits each school and then conducts the education based on each participant, such as students, parents, and teachers, participants can take appropriate classes within their position. However, the student living outside of the city might have a gap in information and accessibility, so it would be great if you can take the education online, just like the offline classes, to have an interactive and then participatory approach. Thank you.
Okay, we'll hear one more person and then move on to question time for the participants.
Hello, I'm Jian Lee, and I'm in Women's University High School sophomores. I'd like to make this suggestion. These days, preventive education is provided through videos, so there are only students who do other things during preventive education. Instead of showing preventive education only through videos, police officers can actually come and experience it in personally. For example, I think school violence prevention play can be an example. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing ideas, our panels and youth representatives. Now we will open to participants. If anyone joining our event through Zoom or YouTube may ask any question related to our topics, please speak up directly at Zoom or leave comments at YouTube. If anyone among the panels want to share any topics, then feel free to. Yeah, feel free to ask or give some comments. Among the panels, if you want to answer the question we already discussed at the panel discussion, you can feel free to answer the questions again.
I think maybe a good question to raise at this point is how valid is emotional poverty, as it is not a tangible material type of poverty as many of the other side events have discussed. So the question I would like to ask is, does everybody agree that emotional and mental poverty or other forms of non-tangible poverty could also be as important as tangible poverty? I could go first. I personally believe that I think mental and emotional poverty, although it's not, you can't touch it and it's not tangible, it is also a very significant issue regarding the poverty that we should address, because the mental poverty causes us to hurt our well-being and we don't feel fulfilled and confident. So I think it's a very important type of poverty that must also be discussed and is not addressed often. If other people also wants to ask some other questions.
I think I kind of reply to Singha's question. I also agree with her in the sense that mental and emotional poverty is just as important as material poverty. We don't talk about it as much because that's not what we initially think of when we hear the word poverty, right? We think of hunger, people not having food to eat on a daily basis. That's important. We need to end world hunger. That's a really important issue. However, I think we also really need to focus on mental and emotional poverty too. We're an organization, and in this side event today, we're mostly talking about adolescence. So the mental health of adolescents and the emotional and mental poverty of adolescents is especially more important, since adolescents and youth are essentially the people who are going to lead our society and the world in the future, right? So ensuring that the youth and the coming generation is mentally and emotionally healthy and stable is a really important issue that we need to pay more attention to.
And also regarding the questions that came up in the chat, Salmia, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but thank you so much for your question. And I definitely agree that in a situation where the person's not willing to report their cybercrime, it may be very difficult for people to step in and help them with their situation. So that is why I think community support as a whole is a very important part of the solution, because if the people around you are very supportive and if they are willing to listen to you and if they make you feel like you're safe and you can talk to them about your concerns, that might help in creating an environment where it's a safe space to open up and talk to people about what you're going through, including cybercrimes. So to address this as a whole at the grassroots, I feel like building a safe community where everybody feels willing to share their cybercrime experiences is a very important, crucial step.
I would like to add on to Singha's comment because I understand that the victim might not be willing to report cybercrime because of various reasons, trauma, not wanting to make the issue bigger and whatnot. I imagine there are a lot of reasons why that person would not be willing. However, in another sense, that's just preventing themselves from getting the proper emotional and mental support from the community and the ability to heal. I don't think just keeping it in by themselves enables them to heal. They were hurt. The fact that nobody knows about it doesn't make that hurt disappear. So I also agree with Singha in the sense that community support and making it really open for the victims to open up about their mental and emotional strains is really important for the overall mental and emotional health of the adolescents and the victims.
And also regarding Sarah's another really great question, I definitely agree that because of free speech laws, it may be difficult sometimes to regulate hurtful or offensive words. And I think that is where governments and private companies should step in. So I feel like they should set up a system where they can regulate their, for example, social media platforms or online websites and check for hurtful comments or cyber violence that might be potentially harming other people. Because I feel like freedom is only guaranteed once if you are not intruding upon other people's freedom to feel safe and feel loved and protected. So because it is difficult for us as community members to do that job, I feel like that is where the governments and heads of private companies should probably step in and help regulate such behavior. Thank you.
Also adding on about this comment, and about the private companies, to my knowledge, Instagram is currently hasn't currently established a system where if using AI technology, so basically when the AI detects that a vicious or hateful word is about to be sent by the user, it alerts them by saying that it is a vicious or it could be potentially a vicious message, and this provides a period of time where the user can think about sending the message before sending the message hastily. So I think these policies should be implemented more throughout other platforms, other social media platforms, as a preventative one of the preventative measures. Using these newly developing technologies, I think that would be another way to, in a sense, regulate hate speech that is currently prevalent in social media.
Yeah, and just to add more to the question that Sarah had gave, I also believe that freedom of speech could totally serve as like a defense for perpetrators of cyber violence and to maybe justify their heinous comments or indecent comments. But I still also agree upon the fact that these hate speeches or those cyber violence should never be justified by these freedom of speech or whatnot. And I see how there actually exist discrepancies between different legislations.
for example, between US and Korea, you can see how freedom of speech is very important in US, but in comparison, Korea, it's relatively less important, and that's why there are many perpetrators who are being accused for like maybe giving hate comments or hate speeches, but in America it doesn't. So that is why I also believe that just like Singa has said before, negotiations or like those like stakeholders coming upon the table to discuss like what is the extent, what is the consensus that we could derive from these discrepancies, so that how these negotiations among different countries and multilateral corporations should be the key for minimizing the discrepancies between the legislative sources among these countries would be very important.
All right, now we have more than 10 questions at the Zoom and YouTube channel, and we have concepts of truth waiting through Zoom. Do you have any comments you want to share?
I just wanted to say thank you all, especially the presentation that you all made incorporating emotional poverty, and then your concentration on that concept of that it seems to be something that's not tangible. I think that that is so wise for us all as communities to be more engaged in that and to really promote the awareness of emotional poverty. And so y'all were doing a great job of that today. I know that as a professional counselor, that has so much to do with our well-being, and that I think the World Youth Alliance presented about, youth feeling unloved and needing a family. And that's the root, it seems, that of so many of the behaviors that we see, and how that they're wanting that so badly. I remember counseling someone one time, and they were 17 years old, and I'll be short, and all they wanted was their family to eat together. They wanted a family meal together. So community starting in the home, is so important. And then for those families to be stronger in our communities. But great job, Blue Tree and World Youth Alliance today. Yeah, I commend you.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. We will address two more questions, one each at the YouTube and the Zoom. So the first one will be as follows. What would be the number one priority in education system or curricula to ensure child safety within digital environment? So what should be changed first?
I'd like to start the conversation on this one, Ji-Sang, if you don't mind. Well, I think here in the Philippines specifically, and we talked about it earlier, there's a huge clamor for the big social media institutions, right? For these conglomerates to really start, I guess, the ball rolling themselves, like make sure that all of their platforms are protected, that they have all of these privacy sort of rules in place so that children are not exploited and objectified in these platforms. Is even beyond cyberbullying, right? There's so many things that are going on in social media that are terrible, that are heinous. But I think here in the Philippines specifically, we have what we call the GMRC bill, so the Good Manners and Right Conduct bill, that seeks to really implement nationwide values education platform that has all of these different ideas as part of the curriculum. So how to navigate an online space safely, how to make sure that you're respectful of everyone, who you aren't even really sure of who this person is, right? They're solely a digital face, right? You don't really know these people personally. So it very much reflects, how they act in an actual real live setting. It has to be able to seep into how they actually navigate the digital space. And I think it does start a lot of those conversations with, the values education that we really provide in our schools, and making sure that our kids really grow up in an environment where they don't, necessarily have to go into social media and make sure that all of their, they pour out all of their aggression on digital, right? In the digital space, and really use this anonymity and take advantage of this anonymity. So to prevent them from being able to do that, what type of space, what type of environment should we nurture our children in, so that they don't have to do that, right? So they don't have to be perpetrators of this violence online. That's, and I guess thank you to the representative from Concepts of Truth for saying that, because a lot of it really starts at home. Like they don't know these ideas of love. They have no idea of what friendship really means. So they don't know how to, how to interact properly, how to really respect or show, be polite with one another. So that's a very specific example here in the Philippines, and I do hope many other international governments do the same. I'm very sure that there are other movements that are happening in South Korea and other parts of Asia Pacific that we'd love to soon hear from them and what they think about all of these different things.
Thank you very much. We will answer one last question. The question is, how can we deal with a situation where if the person is not willing to report the cybercrime? Oh. Sorry for not answering all the questions today, but we have 2 minutes left today. So we promise we will answer your questions through email. If you send us the question through email to leejs@btf.or.kr. I want to close by thanking our distinguished panelists, speakers, and participants for sharing their wonderful perspectives on preventing youth cyber violence. Cyber violence is subdivided into various types, such as cyber abuse, cyber stalking, cyberbullying, etc. However, the current laws around the world cannot deal with all of these properly. Recently, we heard some good news that some countries like Australia, Japan, and the UK are working hard to eradicate cyber violence by legislating or revising a new law. The Blue Tree Foundation also studied cyber violence with a research team, raised public awareness in South Korea, and is now trying to revise related law. I hope all of us, including youths, can enjoy safer cyberspace soon through all these efforts. We had put the link of feedback survey of our events on both Zoom and YouTube. Please feel free to offer any thoughts and feedback. We also have an email address in the chat box if you want to continue this talk. This is a reminder, this recording will also be uploaded on the YouTube channel of the Blue Tree Foundation. Again, thank you to all of our attendees, panelists, and colleagues for joining us at this event. And especially thank you, the World Youth Alliance Asia Pacific, for co-hosting the side event. We hope everyone has a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.